Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We're here to talk about Governor Sununu's budget and how that budget is bad, particularly for women in New Hampshire. I'd like to start by discussing my concerns with how the budget cuts education funding. We can all agree that New Hampshire's public schools need to reopen, but Governor Sununu's budget makes that harder by cutting funding to public schools that are severely cash-strapped because of the COVID pandemic. In Sununu's budget, general and educational fund spending was $41 million less than the current biennial approved budget. Governor Sununu's budget also puts higher education further out of reach for students by cutting funding for the university and community college systems and offering no solution to make tuition more affordable for New Hampshire students who already pay some of the highest in-state tuition rates in the country. Sununu's budget reduces aid for the community college system and the university system by $17.6 million from what they've received this biennium. And even with the merger of the two, that could well be less money for both systems. Once again, it reduces money going back to the two systems by $17.6 million. The governor, through his executive orders, budget, and legislative priorities, has made clear that he will work to further dismantle the public education system here in New Hampshire, ensuring that student access to quality education will be contingent upon their zip code and their family income. These cuts to both public and higher education have a direct impact on women, families, and the economy broadly. New Hampshire's public schools and higher education institutions are some of the state's largest employers. These budget cuts will directly impact our teachers and school administrators, the majority of whom are women. Now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Senator Cindy Rosenwald.
Thank you, Senator Soucy, and good morning, everyone. The Family Resource Centers, or FRCs, play an important role in helping families connect to one another and the community, empowering each family to be successful and resilient. The combination of economic, health, and the social crises exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic has plunged many families into desperate situations over the past year. And the FRCs were at the front lines for families and immediately pivoted to adapt services to meet community needs, standing up virtual support groups, coordinating with school districts to distribute food, adapting home visiting, and addressing concrete needs of families and all the other things that bring community and individuals together. We should be doing more to support and fund the Family Resource Centers. But instead, Governor Sununu proposed a budget that completely eliminates their funding. And this elimination of $650,000 over the biennium will interfere with their ability to provide many services to stabilize families, strengthen protective factors, address basic and economic needs, and prevent further maltreatment of children at risk. Throughout this pandemic, women have been disproportionately impacted economically, and the majority of frontline workers are women. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, 1.8 million men left the workforce in 2020. But for women, the number was 2.5 million, so a 50% increase. Supporting and funding the Family Resource Centers fully would make a massively positive difference during this difficult time in the lives of New Hampshire women. And the choice to defund this program in the middle of the pandemic is very concerning. Now, I'll pass it to Senator Becky Whitley.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. So what I want to talk about today is a crisis that we've been seeing for many years now. We are seeing the impact of a lack of funding to family resource centers right now as 50 children in emergency rooms are waiting for care. Because under Governor Sununu, we have routinely underfunded children and family care programs. Now, this crisis of children waiting for mental health care in emergency rooms was entirely avoidable, and it happened under Governor Sununu's watch. In 2019, the legislature, led by Senate Democrats, handed him bipartisan solutions in the form of Senate Bill 14 and Senate Bill 6, which provided full funding, required a variety of sweeping policy reforms, and the hiring of new child protection service workers to keep children safe and allow children to get the care that they need it when they need it. In his current budget proposal, not only does the governor continue to fail to comply with SB 6 and SB 14, but he's failed to fund 22 child protection service workers. It's long past time for the governor to show real leadership in this crisis and protect our most vulnerable children. Even one child waiting in an emergency room for care shows a failure of our system and a lack of leadership. According to a study conducted by the National Alliance for Caregiving and the AARP, 61% of caregivers are women. This funding impacts both children, providers, and their families. Despite passage of legislation a few years ago and $20 million for funding for children's mental health to make these reforms a reality, these solutions are not in place yet, almost 2 years later. Again, as a result of the governor's inaction, there are up to 50 children in emergency departments across the state just waiting for care with no solution in sight. Now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Senator Rebecca Perkins Kwoka.
Thank you, Senator Whitley. Access to quality, affordable childcare is essential to keeping families in the workforce. For nearly a year now, working families have struggled to balance employment and family obligations. In particular, women, who tend to take on extra responsibilities when it comes to childcare, have been leaving the workforce in droves, as we just discussed. We need to expand access to programs like the Child Care Scholarship, which helps those who can't afford childcare to access it. Unfortunately, the governor's budget proposal reduces the Child Care Scholarship line item by $8.5 million. Childcare availability and affordability was already a challenge before the pandemic, but has been made worse by COVID, and this cut would only exacerbate that. Thankfully, Senator Whitley's bill, SB 144, has been introduced to level the playing field for families qualifying for child care scholarships, incentivize child care programs to open their doors to these families, and to provide stability to New Hampshire families, which they desperately need. We need more innovative legislative solutions to expanding our child care workforce, like Senator Whitley's bill, not budgets that threaten our child care workforce. And now I'll turn it over to Senator Prentiss.
Good morning, and thank you, Senator Perkins Kwoka. New Hampshire, as we know, is the home to many incredible female business leaders. And we need to continue to fund programs like the Small Business Development Center, or the SBDC, to ensure we're continuing to make room for trailblazing women business leaders in our state. But Governor Sununu's budget would be a disaster for women small business owners in New Hampshire. Sununu's budget eliminates the SBDC, making New Hampshire the only state in the country without an SBDC. Governor Sununu's budget looks out for corporate special interests, not struggling Main Street businesses. In 2020 alone, the SBDC said its economic impact in New Hampshire was estimated at $166 million. Small business makes up 99% of New Hampshire businesses and employs 49.8% of our workforce. We need to be doing everything we can to encourage our small business, not putting up roadblocks and cutting resources.